Alright, so a lot of shit's been said about the Trump tariffs over the past year plus, and about the tariffs he passed in the end of his term, 2018, 2019 as well. The one regarding the border disputes between India and China caught my eye very recently because it resembles something that I said would happen with the US-Mexico border as a joke. If the impact of these tariffs ends up weakening the value of the US dollar, which many are speculating could happen, we may end up with a lot of immigrants leaving on their own because they no longer benefit from the exchange rate. Yeah, and when I ended that video saying that, I did not think that Al Jazeera was going to come out with an article 10 days later saying that it actually happened this way on the India-China border. But that's what they think might have happened. And by the way, fuck Al Jazeera for copying me. I'm glad Al Jazeera likes my videos. That doesn't mean I want them fucking stealing my shit. No, I'm just kidding. I know it's probably a coincidence, guys. I'm not actually going to get mad about that. When I started looking more closely into the details of why this is speculated to be the cause of India and China working to negotiate loosening border restrictions so that they can trade with each other more, I realized this actually could have been foreseen. While both countries had tariffs placed on them on the export of aluminum and steel towards the end of Trump's first term in 2018 and 2019, neither sought to improve each other's economic relationship in 2020 due to some political tensions rising over a border skirmish on the Galwan Valley, in which about 20 Indian troops were reported to have been killed, along with a vague unconfirmed really number of Chinese casualties, with the Times of India and intelligence sources in India reporting up to about 50, but the Chinese government reporting only about 4 who were mentioned in a memorial service. Considering that both countries have had problems with corruption, not only with government but with private agencies, and have been known to misreport information publicly, it's actually not clear if either of them is telling the truth. But considering the harsh conditions and how many people were reported to have died of frostbite in the high altitude mountains where the combat is said to have taken place, I do believe there were casualties on both sides. Both sides said that they weren't the ones that started it, so what? They just got up and started fighting and neither of them were provoked? That doesn't make any sense. Well, the actual cause of the conflict seems to have been India's decision to reopen an Air Force base and build a road so that they could use it potentially in the event of a future conflict. And that seems to have been what triggered some of the tensions that led to this conflict. The two countries had an agreement as well that neither one would actually use guns on the other while on the border. And both sides seem to have actually honored that. Most of the casualties came from, like I said, frostbite, and the weapons they used were largely iron baton, stones, and sticks with barbed wire attached to them. I ran across some people who claimed to have been baffled by the fact that they had guns and didn't use them, but that was the treaty, so it's good that they honored it, right? I'm aware it's primitive warfare, but the Yakuza wound up doing the same thing and have been doing this for years because Japan passed stricter gun laws. And the gangsters there wound up using samurai swords to kill each other instead of guns, and adopted sort of a modern version of the Bushido Code. Wait, you mean they didn't just stop killing each other because they couldn't get guns? So while this is a terrible tragedy, it did not actually stop trade between China and India. They actually continue to not only have a really strong trade relationship, they've also maintained a pretty strong codependency with regards to trade with each other as well. According to Bloomberg, the two countries traded $127 billion of goods with each other last year, with India making many of its electronics and pharmaceutical products with raw materials imported from China, and many of the goods that China imports from India are raw materials necessary for manufacturing and factory production. Auto manufacturing companies in China also have a lot of interest in selling cars to India, which is the third largest market in the world for automobiles. While the 2020 skirmish did lead to some restrictions on trade and tourism between the two countries, it also led India to want to strengthen its ties with the US, who also had a growing suspicion of China's political and economic practices. But efforts to reduce the economic impact of Trump's tariffs led India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi to work with Putin on a bilateral agreement with China. Modi had apparently been calling for a peaceful resolution with the Ukraine-Russia conflict, which he obviously got no help with Joe Biden from, with all the billions of dollars he gave Zelensky to fight Russia. And fuck, I guess I just lost my liberal audience here. You thought I was just gonna talk shit about Trump the whole time. Nope, Biden sucks too. And with Modi posting on X that he's looking forward to future talks with his new friend Vladimir Putin, and with Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi visiting India to speak with Indian External Affairs Minister the Indian External Affairs Minister, those talks seem to be going in the right direction in terms of their trade relationship. So the big question here is what part of this is actually connected to Trump's tariffs and why? Well, whatever the Chinese government had done in reaction to the tariffs was largely due to the fact that they probably just didn't want to have to eat the cost, nor did they want to have to raise prices for goods in the US, as the price benefit is one of the main reasons why the US imports so much from China. I think Jinping or somebody might have actually said that he was prepared to just eat the cost if he had to, but naturally speaking, they probably didn't want to come to a point where they just had to eat it. And one of the first things China did in reaction to the Trump tariffs was to restrict trade with India and many of the Southeast Asian countries, in the hopes that we would have more to export without having to eat the cost of these tariffs. But with both India and China having tariffs imposed on them by the US of 50 to 125%, and with both countries' tariffs specifically targeting aluminum and steel, which is used as raw material for many of the products they export to each other. Steel obviously used a lot in construction, in automobile manufacturing, but with aluminum actually being used quite frequently in the production of electronic goods. So it makes sense that they would react this way. And it seems kind of strange to say this, but Trump's tariff may have inadvertently or even intentionally improved economic and diplomatic relations between China and India. Wait, weren't the tariffs supposed to help us though? And that seems to be the folly of the government in pretty much every administration, honestly. It's not even really specific. It sounds like I'm bashing Trump. Every president has made this kind of mistake, really, where they pass a tax or some kind or a tariff in this case. Tariff, basically the same thing if you think about it. But they'll increase taxes or increase duties on another country and just assume that no one's going to change their spending habits as a result of this. This perceived viewpoint on tax law and the economic impact on changing it can best be described as being very, very retarded. It's pretty unusual to see anybody at any income level to wake up one day with a sudden and drastic increase in their taxes or in other types of costs and make no changes to their behavior or spending habits. It just doesn't happen that way. And the reason it doesn't happen is because of something called common sense. Prices of goods go up, sales tax goes up, we generally do buy less of it in most cases, unless it's something completely inelastic like salt that we buy like once a year or something. Or if it's a staple good like gasoline that we have no choice but to buy, but we'll generally buy a little bit less of it and cut out unnecessary extraneous trips when the price goes up. And people in general, whether they're rich or poor, whether they own a company or not, typically have more control over their spending than they do on how much they have coming in. But maybe I'm not giving Donald Trump enough credit. Maybe a stronger peace agreement between the US and India was his goal with the tariffs. Somehow I doubt that.